I see we have with us Pacific Daily News, the Guam Daily Post, KUAM, Mariana's Business Journal, and Candid News. Thank you all so much for making time to join us this evening out here in snowy Maryland, and of course still morning, I believe, in sunny and sandy Guam. I wanted to call this press conference together to be able to update our media partners and, of course, the people of Guam on where we are in the ongoing relief package. So thank you all so much for making the time to join us and for, of course, making your platforms available for your listening audience to avail of what we have to share. I wanted to begin by thanking the people of Guam for their patience. I know that there's been a lot of anxiety around whether or not there's going to be any new relief for our community. On this particular instance, we are a lot more hesitant to bring forward any details because there was just so much change, so many moving parts, and contrary to previous notifications where we came to you, our media partners, and to the public with updates on where things were at. This was a very different process. It was a lot less certain, and there were a lot of last minute changes, and we did not want to be coming out and informing the public of things that all of a sudden weren't looking like they were tracking to move forward. Um, as we speak right now, the House is voting on the omnibus bill HR 133 that includes funding for the federal government as well as funding for COVID-19 relief, another round of funding for that relief. We wanted to basically take the opportunity to update all of you on what the details are on that relief. And we are confident that not only are we going to pass the bill this evening, but that this measure will pass the Senate and that the president should be signing it. All the proper signals were received for us to finally feel comfortable bringing you up to speed on what the details are. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. We're going to begin first with the relief that's coming directly to our people. And before we get into those details, I do want to begin by extending thanks to key members of Congress that have brought the people of Guam to this point. When the negotiations were taking place for these relief packages, it was different from previous negotiations that originated either in House or Senate leadership. This new movement actually originated in a very unique way with a bipartisan caucus coming together that comprised of both senators in the Senate and representatives in the House. Because that was the originating point of these relief talks, there were different things that were coming together that basically have completed the package that we're going to share tonight. But I wanted to thank certain members of Congress for helping us to ensure that Guam and our territories are going to be meaningfully included in this package. In original discussions, there were concerns about whether territories were going to be included, whether certain special considerations that we would need for our territories were going to be factored in. And we can very confidently and happily say that they have been and that they are going to be when the bill passes. I want to thank the Hispanic Caucus for absolutely being a voice for the people of Guam in ensuring that we were included in the final package. I want to thank my colleague, Tony Cardenas, for his leadership in making sure that certain provisions were included. I want to thank my colleague, Nydia Velasquez, who's also the chairwoman of the Committee on Small Business, for very pointedly stating that she was not going to allow for anything to move forward without territories being included. I want to thank my colleague, Josh Gottheimer, on the Financial Services Committee, who is the co-chairman of the Problem Solvers Caucus. That was the group within the House that was putting together the House components of this very special package. He reached out to us. We spoke very, very plainly, and he assured us and delivered for us on that assurance that territories were going to be included as needed. I want to thank my chairwoman, Maxine Waters, in the Financial Services Committee, who also made it very, very plain that she was going to have direct communications with leadership and insist that while the Financial Services Committee is participating in this relief, territories will also be availing of what we're going to be receiving. So through their efforts, the efforts of your territorial representatives, particularly, of course, myself and my dear colleague to the north, Congressman Kilili Sablan, as well as my colleague from Puerto Rico, Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, from American Samoa, Mataratawagan, and from the Virgin Islands, Stacey Plaskett. We all advocated as strongly as we could to ensure that this package was put together. Going directly into the details, I want to begin first with the economic impact payments, what is commonly known as stimulus on Guam. These economic impact payments was one of the last minute components that were negotiated, and the final package is going to have $600 in stimulus per taxpayer, $1,200 for those who are married filing jointly, in addition to $600 per qualifying child. The credit phases out starting at $75,000 of modified adjusted gross income, $112,500 for heads of household, and $150,000 for those married filing jointly, at a rate of $5 per $100 of additional income. Some new considerations compared to the CARES Act. In general, taxpayers without an eligible Social Security number are not eligible for the payment. However, married taxpayers filing jointly, where one spouse has an SS number and one spouse does not, are eligible for a payment of $600 equivalent for that one spouse. Previously in the CARES Act, if there was one filer that did not have an SS, it disqualified everybody. The good news is that now, even if there is a non-SS number filer on the return, those who do have SS numbers are going to qualify. So that's $600 for every SS number holder, to include the spouse and any eligible child. That would need to be administered, of course, by the Department of Revenue and Taxation, because there are those minor tweaks in the qualification provisions. DRT is going to need to reconcile those of IRS, but I am confident that because they've done this previously with different qualification criteria in the past, that they should be able to move a little bit more expeditiously than in the previous rollout under the CARES Act. Next, we have the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance. Again, the CARES Act, we artfully crafted it to attach it to independent contractors throughout the United States. And so that is affording us an opportunity to continue to avail of pandemic unemployment assistance. And this will be available all the way up until March 14, 2021. Individuals will be able to continue receiving benefits, and that will conclude on April 5th of 2021. So this is going to cover us all the way up until the first quarter of the new year. It extends eligible weeks claimed from 39 weeks to 50 weeks. So if you've exhausted your 39 weeks, you're going to be extended all the way up until a 50-week claiming window. Any appeals will now be at the state and territory level. So that will save us time versus Department of Labor having to go back to Department of Labor US. They'll be able to address the appeals directly. States and territories have the authority to waive overpayments made without fault on the part of the individual, or when such repayment would violate equity and good conscience. So in other words, if there was an overpayment to an individual on their PUA, and that was not at no fault of the individual, the territories would be having jurisdictional authority to waive that. I know that there's been a lot of concern about paybacks for those who filed in good faith. This will allow for those to be more expeditiously adjudicated by the Department of Labor. There's a limit on retroactive payments of PUA benefits to weeks of unemployment after December 1st, 2020. So it's imperative that Department of Labor does not have too many delays in accumulating any retroactive PUA that needs to get paid out. The weekly benefit on PUA will be for $345 a week. And we're also having an extension of the FPUC, the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, which will continue at a rate of $300 per week. Prior to CARES Act expiration on July 31st at $600, this now has been reduced to $300. There is no back pay for the FPUC prior to the date of passage. And so there's no accumulated FPUC that's going to be coming as a lump sum. That's only going to be paid forward upon passage and enactment of HR 133. Moving on for benefits for individuals, we were very pleased to be able to secure a rental assistance benefit directly for territories. And this was especially important because not only did this originate in the Financial Services Committee, but we were able to actually carve out an amount specifically for small territories so that we weren't going to receive a smaller amount based on the formulas. So I'm very happy to announce that we are going to be receiving $75 million in rental assistance for the territory of Guam. This is a very, very significant breakthrough because it's going to allow for eligible households to receive up to 12 months of assistance. And that goes back over the course of the pandemic. So if you have accumulated any rental deficits to your landlords, this 75 million will allow you to close out those deficits without being held to any kind of back rent that you have accumulated, which is very, very important. The CDC eviction moratorium will extend through January 31st, 2021. And that's important because we don't want anyone being kicked out of their houses between now and when the program should be stood up and rolled out. I know that on local news, there were some concerns about the local rental assistance program still taking a little while to get stood up. This moratorium will give all the way till the end of January. So it's imperative that our housing authorities on Guam stand up the rental assistance programs so that the federal dollars could begin rolling out and preventing the evictions of individuals who are behind or who miss their rental payments. Assistance for rental, this rental pot may be used for rent, utility payments, unpaid rent or utility bills accumulated through the pandemic, and other housing expenses incurred due to the pandemic. Eligible households, again, may receive 12 months of assistance. Renters would apply for assistance with entities that state and local grantees select to administer the program. So it's likely going to be our local housing authorities. Once a renter qualifies for assistance, the administering entity would send the payment direct to the landlord. So it's not going to be going to the tenant. It's going to be going direct to the landlord for the amounts claimed. If a landlord declines to receive the assistance from the administering entity, a renter may instead receive a payment directly from the administering entity to make rental payments to the landlords themselves. Landlords could also directly apply for rental assistance under the program, but will be required to notify the tenant that assistance is being provided on their behalf and obtain the tenant's consent. Eligible households are defined as renter households who have 1, a household income not more than 80% of the area median income. 2, have 1 or more household members who can demonstrate a risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability. And 3, have 1 or more household members who qualify for unemployment benefits or experience financial hardships due to directly, indirectly, the pandemic. Assistance will be prioritized for renter households that do not exceed 50% of the AMI, as well as renter households who are currently unemployed and have been unemployed for 90 days. So if you're receiving unemployment, if you're behind on your rent, and definitely if you're behind on your rent for more than 90 days and the overall household income is below 50% of the area median income, you're going to be definitely prioritized for receiving this rental assistance. For those who are on SNAP monthly benefits will be increased by 15%. And eligibility will be extended to college students who are eligible for federal or work-study programs or has an expected family member contribution of 0. On to our businesses, we do have a second round of Paycheck Protection Program, PPP. Just a recap on PPP. The terms and conditions are the same as CARES Act, the adjusted CARES Act terms and conditions. It is a loan designed to provide a direct incentive for small businesses to keep their workers on the payroll. SBA will forgive loans if all employee retention criteria are met, and the funds are used for eligible expenses. PPP loans have an interest rate of 1%. Loans issued prior to June 5th have a maturity of 2 years. Loans issued after June 5th have a maturity of 5 years. Loan payments will be deferred for borrowers who apply for loan forgiveness until SBA remits the borrower's loan forgiveness amount to the lender. If a borrower does not apply for loan forgiveness, payments are deferred for 10 months after the end of the covered period for the borrower's loan forgiveness. No collateral or personal guarantees are required. Neither the government nor lenders will charge small businesses any fees. Some technical changes. It clarifies that gross income does not include any amount that would otherwise arise from the forgiveness of a PPP loan. So the PPP loan won't count against your gross income. It clarifies that deductions are allowed for otherwise deductible expenses paid with the proceeds of a PPP loan that is forgiven. So if you get a PPP loan, you expense it on business expenses, and you typically would deduct those expenses. You can still deduct those expenses even though you received the funding from a PPP loan. It allows borrowers to elect a covered period ending at the point of the borrower's choosing between 8 and 24 weeks after origination. So you can either use up the funding for an 8-week window, or you can stretch out your eligibility for the funding, the covered period, for 24 weeks. Businesses that were not in operation on February 15th, 2020 shall not be eligible for an initial PPP loan or a second draw on PPP. So your business had to have been established on or before February 15th, 2020. There is funding that goes directly to education. There is an education stabilization fund. We're still working on receiving the estimated amounts for Guam, but the outlying areas funding for K-12 and colleges, universities is $819 million total. Insular areas will share $400 million based on population share. There is also a higher education emergency relief fund of $22.7 billion that our higher education institutions can seek to avail of. And there is additional funds, the Child Care and Community Development Block Grants. A total of $10.25 billion has been appropriated. Funding allocated is based on the Guam CDBG formulas, similar to the CARES Act. We'll work on receiving those estimated amounts and passing them through as soon as we finalize those. There's also additional funding provided for Head Start programs. There is funding for what's called CDBG organizations, community development financial institutions, as well as low and moderate income and minority communities. And we'll be providing those details as soon as we're able to firm them up. But basically, there's a $9 billion emergency capital investment program that's administered by the Treasury. This will provide low-cost, long-term capital investments to minority depository institutions, i.e., local banks, and as well as $3 billion to CDFIs, so that they're also able to avail of funding similar to minority lending institutions. Aside from that, because this is an omnibus government funding bill, we were able also to successfully include language that we co-sponsored to allow for our brothers and sisters in the Kofa states, the nations of Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of the Marshall Islands to be able to avail of Medicaid funding. This is very significant because originally they were funded from MIP. They weren't eligible for Medicaid since 1996. Senator Hirono has been attempting to do this since the 114th Congress. We were able to co-sponsor a measure in the House and get good House momentum to finally push this through on both chambers. And so it's in the omnibus bill that's being voted on. We're very excited to be able to announce this as well. And lastly, a real quick update on the H-2B amendment and the National Defense Authorization Act. The president has until December 23rd to veto that legislation. If he does not veto it, it lapses into law. We have received word from our leadership that should the president veto it, they will be calling us back in for an override vote on December 28th. The fact that he has not vetoed it, and the fact that it does also contain language for a pay raise to military personnel, and we are coming up onto the holiday season, particularly Christmas Day. I'm confident that I'm hopeful that we won't be seeing a veto of such meaningful legislation just days before Christmas. That pretty much concludes the detail that we have at the moment. Again, voting is ongoing with debate ongoing on HR 133, but we are confident that we're going to see this pass the House, the Senate, and eventually be signed by the President. I'll go ahead and pause here and turn it over to our media partners for any questions you may have. Please indicate by raising your hand in the chat icon. I believe, if our moderator, I believe we have a question from Troy Torres. Troy, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Congressman Guinness, and Merry Christmas to you, your family, and your staff. Hi. Hi.
Is that me or is that you? You may have the volume on another unit in your vicinity. If there's 2 units running the meeting with volume on, it will cause the echo.
You know what? If the echo is continuing, I'll just I'll type my message into the chat room if that's okay. Or am I good now?
I think the echo is okay now.
Okay.
Actually, wait, the echo might be coming from my end. One second. Let me do a sound check. Sound check. 1, 2, sound check. Okay, I think we're okay now. Go ahead, Troy.
Okay. Thank you, Congressman. 2 questions or 2 separate topics. One is, I'm sorry if I missed it, but can you tell me how long the FPUC will last to? I know the PUA is to March 14th. How long will the FPUC go to?
This will be added on for weeks after the bill is passed through March 14th, 2021.
Okay, so same as the PUA date then. And then the second thing, I was very curious about this pay raise for the military. Can you tell us more about that?
I don't have the detail in front of me, but it was written into the NDAA that is currently on the president's desk, that there is pay raise language for military personnel. We can shoot that to your offices when we get the detail. My staff is also watching at this time, so if I get any messages passed through in the interim, we'll make sure to update you on that.
Thank you so much. So the House is voting now. The Senate will. Do you know when the Senate will vote?
As soon as we engross and we send over, it is a 5,000-page bill, so I doubt it will be this evening. It will likely be tomorrow.
Okay, very cool. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add as well, there was one other detail that I forgot to mention in my opening. Any unused CARES Act funds are extended to December 31st, 2021. So there won't be any CARES Act money lost at the end of the calendar year. It's going to be available for use till 2021. But the terms and conditions for their use has not changed. It still is limited to what was enumerated in the CARES Act. And just to be very clear, one of the things that were not included in this relief package was any additional funding for state and local government operations specifically. They are going to be receiving healthcare money and education money and indirectly tax revenues from any economic activity generated from stimulus payments and tax revenues from the continuation of PUA and FPUC, but there is no direct local government funding at this time. There has been discussions of that being addressed with the incoming administration, but again, that's very premature.
I'm sorry, Congressman, I did have one more question, and it's regarding Secretary Mnuchin's comments about when the stimulus payments will be available. So he said by next week, the Treasury Department will be sending out those payments if all goes well in Congress and the president signs it, I guess, this week. Is the process going to be different for Guam since we don't get direct payments from the IRS?
We are going to see the same issue where we're going to need to reconcile our lists with the IRS.
Okay.
Because there is that one change on the SS number eligibilities, that could create a delay, but I don't think it should create one necessarily for those who've already been eligible, because this is not exclusionary, this is inclusionary. So I think if IRS, I mean, sorry, DRT is listening, what they should do and what they should reconcile with IRS is approval of their pre-existing lists, because those are all copacetic to begin with, and then backtrack to any names that were denied because of SS number issues and resubmit those as new considerations. So hopefully the DRT can work that through quickly of IRS, and we can keep our timelines as close as possible to the IRS and Treasury timelines that they're stating publicly.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you.
And I just got word in from our really excellent policy team. The pay raise for members of the armed services in the NDAA is 3%.
Thank you. We'll get that out. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we have Karul Anomita with PDN.
Good morning, Congressman, or good evening over there. So that did cover most of my questions, but I did want some clarification on the extension of PUA. So is there, because it's an extension of the same program, will the money continue seamlessly? Like, will the benefits continue running seamlessly, or will there potentially be a lag between, you know, one kind of round of the program ending and then this next round of funding beginning?
That's a good question. The language is intended to be as seamless as possible, so there is no new hoops to jump through and no wheels to reinvent. And so it really would be just an extension of the existing PUA and FPUC, just with reduced amounts on the FPUC from 600 down to 300. But everybody who's currently availing of PUA or who would qualify to avail up until March 14th, 2021 should be able to be processed and handled as they've been handled so far.
Got it. And just to clarify that as well, so you said that the eligibility window is extended to 50 weeks now, as opposed to the 39 that it was prior to this, and that the window also extends over to March 14th. So that means perhaps if someone is laid off next month, they would be able to then apply and avail, correct? As opposed to previously, that was not the case.
That's correct. It extends PUA to March 14th and allows individuals receiving benefits as of March 14th to continue to April 5th. So if you're laid off even in January of next year, you should be able to still qualify for PUA as long as you are receiving benefits as of March 14th, 2020.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Licanto Nestor.
Yes, thank you. Happy day, Congressman. Nice to talk to you.
Hi, Nestor.
You know, as you're probably aware, there's been a lot of comments about the $600 EIP payments across the country. It's about half of what the CARES Act was. I'm wondering if you could comment on that amount and whether you're aware of any indication from the incoming Biden administration, whether they're going to pass or try to get through an additional stimulus payment of at least $600 to match the CARES Act.
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the 600 stimulus was one of those 11th hour last minute agreements. It was something that was being pushed in both chambers, the Senate and the House, for some kind of stimulus. There was pushback. Some parties did not want any stimulus at all. The amounts were starting to fluctuate from 0 to 1,200. Some threw out 300, and eventually everyone just settled on 600. So it's one of those classic horse trading type of examples that occur in a representative democracy. That was the number that everyone was able to finally come to terms with and agree on to move this forward. The new administration is absolutely open to reconsidering everything that has to do with COVID relief. More specifically, they are interested in entertaining direct aid to local governments, since that was not addressed at all. But another stimulus could be on the table with the new administration, seeing that there were members in both chambers who wanted an amount greater than 600, but we're having to compromise with this amount that we're moving forward today.
That thank you for sharing that announcement about the encumbrance of the CARES Act funding extended to December of next year. So I was wondering, because it's anticipated or it's estimated that we'll have maybe 300 to 400 million of unexpended PUA money by the end of this year. Do you think that is a possibility that that might also be extended?
No, and that needs to be clarified. The PUA funding is not a lump sum set aside. What happened was we got the legislation passed to authorize Guam to be able to receive a special PUA. They turned in a budget for up to 900 million, I believe. But that budget was just to kind of set a framework for the existing program. It wasn't that we got appropriated $900 million and we need to figure out how to spend it. That was just kind of the range that Guam was able to tap into, depending on what the final unemployment figures turned out to be. And those final unemployment figures have fluctuated downwards. The number of unemployed was lower than originally projected, and the amount needed to fund that was lower than originally budgeted. That does not mean that we have a pot of money sitting out there waiting for us to tap into. That was just an allocation. If we're going to want to access funding, we're going to need to go through an entirely new appropriations process. That money is not out there waiting for us to figure out how to reallocate. It was just a range that was authorized, but it was not an amount that was appropriated.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I got one more question. It's kind of a little off topic, but Interior Secretary nominee Congresswoman Deb Haaland, your colleague, also a freshman from the previous term. Have you had a chance to speak with her, and will you be working closely? What's your relationship with her, as she will be the top federal official for the territories going forward?
We're very excited about Deb's nomination. She's a really good friend. We were very, very close as an incoming freshman. She actually was very instrumental in helping Guam get a seat on the Financial Services Committee. We served together in the Natural Resources Committee, particularly on the subcommittee on Indigenous people. And we backed each other up numerous times. So Deb and I have a really excellent working relationship. We're very excited about the prospects of her serving as our Interior Secretary. And we're very excited about the doors that that's going to open for Guam, with us being able to work as closely as we have and as closely as we're hoping to in her new capacity. I think that there couldn't be a finer nominee for that position, not only with her experience and with her background, but in terms of Guam being able to work very, very closely with her to get some of our legacy interior issues addressed.
I have a couple more, but I'll pass on for now. Thank you, Congressman.
Okay, we'll circle back, Mr.
Next, we have Heidi Eugenio.
Hi, good evening, Congressman.
Hi, Heidi.
Clarification again on the PUA FPAC. So are you saying that because Guam requested 924 million, but was only able to spend close to 500 million based on the number of individual unemployment claims, does that mean that labor has to request another amount, or should it just stay within the 924 million?
Yeah, no, definitely. If the 924 million is what's needed for this extension, then that amount will be used by the government of Guam up to that amount. But because we're legislatively extending the PUA to the end of April, even if we exceed 924 million, the federal government will authorize a larger sum to be able to meet whatever the demand is between now and then. But because we've had PUA in place for, gosh, the better part of almost a year, and we've only gotten to about 400 million, 400 to 500 million. I doubt we're going to max out and exceed the 900 million allocation in the next 3 months, so 3 to 4 months. So I don't think it will be necessary, but if it does become necessary, I don't see the new administration having any problem authorizing any increases.
Congressman, can you also clarify on that statement earlier about labor or State Department's, Guam labor needing to adjudicate or pay all claims by December 1st? What was that about?
There's a limit on retroactive payments of PUA benefits to weeks of unemployment after December 1st, 2020. So we'll reach back and comb through the language to find out what that limit is. But basically, they're not wanting to have these weeks and weeks and weeks of retro PUA accumulating and then getting paid all the way back. So we'll be communicating with the local government and what those details are, and we'll make sure to pass those details along to you folks as soon as we firm them up.
Oh, if I can have one more question on this round.
Sure.
Given what is in this relief package, what does Guam have to do in preparation, in anticipation of its enactment?
I would just encourage the government to really fine tune the existing programs that they have. I know that the Director of Revenue Tax has already reached out to IRS, and that was a very smart move to be able to figure out how to get in front of this before it even gets enacted. But again, a lot of this was written to try and make it as seamless as possible. So I don't see at this time the creation of any new programs. I just have concerns about how delayed the unemployment program has been, and also how delayed the rental assistance program has been. That's been 3 months in the making, and it still hasn't rolled out. And we have another 75 million about to come through. And that initial rental assistance program, I believe, was only for $700,000 plus. So we're looking at a 100 time increase in the amount that they're going to have available. So I would very much just encourage a fine tuning of the existing programs so that they can be more expeditious with the new resources that we're making available.
Thank you.
Sure.
And if Mr. Licanto still has any questions, you can go next.
Actually, if I may, moderator, I see Miss Maureen Maratita's hand has been up. If we can go straight to her.
My apologies. Miss Maureen Maratita, thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Congressman. So a couple of my questions have been answered, but I did want to just ask about the Medicaid for the citizens of the freely associated states. Is that just in Guam that they will be eligible for Medicaid, or also in Hawaii and the US mainland?
It's for all US jurisdictions.
Okay. And do you know when that is likely to start?
The bill is being voted on this evening. I'm not familiar with a start date, but I'll have my team firm that up, and we'll be reaching back to you and giving you any updates on that if there is any specific start date for that to be effective.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you for reaching out to us all.
Thank you so much, Maureen. Nestor, we'll go ahead and circle back to you at this point.
All right, thank you, Congressman. I just wanted to just dig deeper into the $75 million for the rental assistance. How did that number, how'd you arrive at that number? And can you explain a little bit more about how that will work with individuals who are now experiencing, say, 3, 4, 5 months of non-payment of rent? Will that entire amount be paid or be portions of it? Is there a cap? Just wanted to get some more, flesh out some more details.
Sure. So originally, in the original bill, Guam was lumped in with DC and Puerto Rico. to carve out and share $500 million. And based on the formula, originally, Guam would have only received 19,650,000. We brought this to the attention of the Financial Services Committee. We gave them all of our numbers and share our concerns. And basically, we had that number originally was at about 0.07% of the total amount being allocated for rental assistance across the country. We were able to get that increase to 0.3%, which is almost a 100% increase to what was originally being proposed in the HEROES Act and HEROES 2.0. So this sum, 75 million, is actually the largest rental assistance sum that has ever crossed the table so far in all of these discussions. So that's how we were able to secure 75 million specifically for Guam. It's a special carve out for small territories. So of course, the CNMI and American Samoa and the US Virgin Islands are also going to be receiving a proportional allotment of that carve out. Your question about the rental assistance going back, I think I kind of went over it. Was there anything in particular that you wanted me to clarify in terms of that? Basically, anyone that had any kind of rental assistance issues since the pandemic and accrued a rental balance, basically a balance of rents owed, would be eligible if they met the income requirements or had any one of their household been affected by the pandemic to the point where they qualified for unemployment. So that's pretty much how this has been the criteria that's been set up for them to be eligible. Did I answer your question, or was there something more specific that I could speak to?
No, that's nothing further, Congress. Just one more thing. I know Tori's got a question too, but just wanted to ask about the PPP. Would it be kind of administered in the same way as it was previously? Any changes to that?
No changes. Everything also would be administered the same way. Once the law is passed, again, through the SBA, banks will be able to make the necessary loans to their business customers.
All right. Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you. And Troy, we can circle back to you. I see you have another question here.
Thank you, Congressman. Forgive my misunderstanding of how the business side of this thing works, but we've been getting some questions from small business owners on Guam and in the Commonwealth to the north. Is there anything that's built into either the CARES Act or this new proposal that protects small businesses from, I guess, banks and creditors? So please indulge me. A few businesses have been telling me that banks are coming to them to collateralize their real property and other assets because they have not been able to pay their commercial loans. And the Main Street lending program, I think is what it's called, has not been, banks on Guam have not opted into that program. Is there some sort of correlation here, and are there any protections for small businesses against sort of, I guess, predatory lending?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily predatory. I think what may be happening is that these financial institutions are basically taking an abundance of caution in their handling of existing customers by trying to secure assets against amounts owed to the banks. There is no moratorium on commercial loans. I know the Main Street lending facility was intended to provide loans to eligible borrowers, but the banks themselves needed to initiate with the Federal Reserve their ability to partake in the Main Street lending facility. Based on my inquiries, I know that only one bank was looking into it, but I don't know if any bank has actually implemented it. I would encourage them to. I think that it's a little draconian to seize assets or to collateralize assets rather than take advantage of the federal programs that are available for them to make available to their customers to help carry them along in all of this. I would advise those those small businesses going through that to absolutely take advantage of this next round of PPP, to get them some breathing room. Um, but as of my knowledge, there is no protections in place to prevent lending institutions from being able to collateralize existing assets against loans outstanding. And quite frankly, it would be challenging, I think, to be able to pass something like that through the Congress, unless there was a Democrat control over both chambers and the administration, because I know that there would absolutely be Republican pushback on something like that. What I can probably look into, now that this is being brought to our attention, is following through on the Main Street lending facility participation locally,
Okay.
and seeing if we can maybe um, make that more available somehow through the Financial Services Committee legislatively. We'll need to look more closely at that. But yeah, it is concerning to hear that enterprises are having their assets collateralized, especially when we do have other lending facilities out there that could be taken advantage of by the financial institutions to help offer them more relief. We'll circle back with them on that.
Thank you. I think there is a concern among these small businesses, conspiratorial or not, that that they have no opportunity to conduct business through the lockdown. They've had no ability to come up with the money to pay their loans, and now their real property and other assets are on the line, and banks will be, and creditors will be swooping this up. So thank you for looking out for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, I absolutely would like to discourage our financial institutions from going that route. You know, we have already, as a district far out in the middle of the Pacific, we already have our challenges of people being able to start up enterprises. And so as much as we can extend them any form of available relief to continue operating without cannibalizing their line of business, I think is absolutely critical for us to maintain as much normalcy as possible, so that we can, you know, seize these opportunities of a vaccine and recover as quickly as possible. The less permanent damage we do economically, the faster our recovery will be. And that's why these relief packages are so important, even though sometimes they're not as robust as we would like them to be. But yeah, we'll definitely go back to the Financial Services Committee and see what the status is on the MLF, and if we can help make that more available to these struggling enterprises. I did want to circle back real quick on a question from Maureen. I did get an update from my team. The Medicaid provisions for our compact brothers and sisters will apply to benefits and items and services furnished on the date of the enactment of this act. So as soon as it becomes law, we will be availing of the new Medicaid coverage for Kofa migrants.
Okay, thank you, Congressman.
You're welcome, Maureen. Thank you for the question. Do we have any other questions from any of our media partners present?
At this time, I don't show any other questions, Congressman.
Thank you. Well, let me go ahead and conclude. I want to thank everybody for making the time. I want to thank our media partners for joining us this evening, your morning. Thank you so much for making your social media platforms available for your listening audience. I hope that we provided a level of reassurances to our community that we're going to see an extension, at least for a time, of a lot of the relief that has been carrying us thus far. I again would like to encourage our local government to be as proactive as possible in tightening up timelines, and also just knowing that while we are hopeful that 2021 may see a revisitation of relief, we need to, as much as possible, plan and prepare for taking on and standing up our community with our own capacity. So we'll bring the relief as often and as you know, as robustly as we can, but we need to just keep our eye on trying to stand ourselves up, because the sooner we can do that, the less we'll be having these 11th hour nail biting sessions. I prefer that we're in a place where we're a lot more comfortable and not having our community the week of Christmas wondering whether or not they're going to be able to make it into the new year. But again, thank you all so much for joining us. We'll go ahead and conclude this meeting, and I appreciate everybody's participation. Si Diyos maasi.